Good morning, Senator. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm terrific. How are you?
We are wonderful. Very excited to have you here. So much going on. And I know let's talk about the Stop Bad Mergers Act, Senator Baldwin.
Yes.
Where does this stem from? What would it do? And why is this bad?
So this first came to my attention when we heard the announcements that two large Energizer battery plants in Wisconsin were going to be closing. These were one of them's in Fenimore, Wisconsin. The other's in Portage, Wisconsin. They employ hundreds of Wisconsinites, and they have for decades. But what happened back in 2018 was there was a merger or an acquisition by Energizer from a brand I think most Wisconsinites will recognize, Rayovac. These used to be Rayovac battery plants. And so Energizer acquired them, and that had to be scrutinized and approved by the Federal Trade Commission. But they did a really sloppy job. I have to say, this is my own opinion. It was done really quickly, whereas in other countries where they were scrutinizing the same merger, they were looking at it over a longer period of time. They were placing conditions on the merger. Not in this case in the US. They quickly approved it with no conditions. And one of the things that the Federal Trade Commission is supposed to be looking at is the health of the competition. And so these mergers should not lead to more expensive batteries. In fact, they should perhaps lead to lower cost batteries if there's good competition. But they never looked at the impact on jobs. And so what this bill, Stop Bad Mergers Act, does is it empowers the Federal Trade Commission to look retroactively at something they've approved in the past and look at did it have the desired impact on the cost of the product for consumers? I mean, these are the lead consumer watchdogs, right? So we need them to be looking at that, but also what impact did it have on workers and jobs? And so number one, this bill would permit the Federal Trade Commission to take a look backwards. But in future, it would also require that they analyze the impact of mergers and acquisitions on jobs, on workers. And during the process of scrutiny of a proposed merger, workers would have input, meaning they would be able to file documents and have their testimony heard about their view on how this merger or acquisition would impact the workforce.
That would be game changing if workers were able to weigh in on this, wouldn't it be?
Absolutely. There's there's so many decisions that are made in the corporate world where workers have little input, and yet it's the workers who lead to the success of the corporations. It's workers who make them profitable. And so, I think about the board decisions to make stock buybacks or, to acquire or merge and all those sort of things. There's usually not workers in the board or, workers represented on the board of directors.
Right.
So this bill doesn't address that per se. It just allows pathways for having input. But that's something we should be aware of.
If you're just joining us, Wisconsin's U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin is joining us, and we're talking about the Stop Bad Mergers Act, and it specifically relates to two battery plants here in Wisconsin, and batteries have a long history in this state.
They do. I mean, Rayovac was around for many, many years, and it is a time, interestingly, where we should be putting more emphasis on battery manufacturing, especially as we look at a pivot on how we produce energy. The more we hope to rely on clean and renewable sources that are sometimes, like solar, where you produce the energy during the day, because you have to have the sunlight, but you need to store it so that it can be used in the evenings and night. We need to perfect that technology. And And so these, of course, are small scale batteries. One of the plants is batteries for hearing aids. And the other is, I guess, standard alkaline batteries, the things we use in many of our gadgets and
Sure.
devices. But there's no lack of demand for hearing aid batteries, right?
Right.
As our society ages. And so just the fact that these plants are closing, those jobs are being offshored is so frustrating to me. But it's strengthening the hand of the Federal Trade Commission to be able to look at more factors when they're looking at approving or denying or placing conditions on a merger. I want to see them have the tools necessary to do the job right, and especially when so many workers are affected by their decisions.
I don't know this to be completely accurate, Senator Baldwin, but it does seem to me like when companies merge, it rarely works out well for the workers because people become redundant and some of those jobs are recreated and it just seems like a lot of people end up losing their always works out pretty well for the company and the people in the boardroom, as you said, not necessarily so much for the ones who are working on the line.
Yes, absolutely. I think that what this bill will do is allow the Federal Trade Commission not only to consider future mergers and acquisitions, but take some lessons learned from things that they've approved in the past. How did that really work for workers? And what right now we can speak about that anecdotally, but I'd like the Federal Trade Commission to have the resources they need to take a retrospective look at mergers and acquisitions that they've previously approved and say, how did it impact consumers? How did it impact workers? They'd have then more to rely on as they look at similar mergers and acquisitions in the future. And
We,
so, this would move us from the anecdotal to facts, hard facts that they should have in their hands as they evaluate things in the future.
Interesting comment from David on the live stream. He says, I feel like this bill would involve a lot of looking at the Boeing McDonnell Douglas merger as well, given how things have turned out. And I didn't realize until last month that stock buybacks used to be illegal.
Oh yes. So this is a very big passion of mine. In the early 1980s, the Securities and Exchange Commission made them permissible stock buybacks. The concern there and the reason they were illegal before was because it's inside. It's like insider trading. The
Yeah.
information in your company, and then you announce a stock buyback. And it really it really feathers the nests of the corporate executives and others who are compensated in terms of stocks, et cetera. But it also takes that capital out of being able to be reinvested in the plant and in the workers. And in R&D and all those other things that they could be doing with that. So since the time that the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, sort of opened that door up again, we have seen staggering sums of corporate profits being used for stock buybacks, as opposed to these other things that you could do with those profits. And in fact, some corporations have even gone into debt. They've borrowed money so that they can do stock buybacks. And I think we should go back to the day that they were considered, that they were limited. But in the meantime, one of the other proposals out there is to put a surcharge or a small tax on the stock buybacks to temper them at least a little bit. And frankly, I think we should look very seriously at that tool too.
Yeah, fewer stock buybacks and maybe more doors that stay closed on planes. It's just a thought. I know it's wacky. Senator, we have about 3 minutes left. And just real briefly, with all of the division that we see across the country, when you talk to constituents as you travel across the state, which I know you do frequently, what are the things that people say they agree on? What do we get? What do we actually get along about?
Well, we all love Wisconsin, and I think about just what we were talking about. We have such a strong work ethic. And so the fight for good paying jobs that support your family, that allow you to get ahead, to save some money, go on vacation, with the kids in the summer. And so good paying jobs and our work ethic. We agree on how beautiful our state is, and particularly the need to protect our state waters. We're on 2 Great Lakes. We're on the Mississippi River and St. Croix River on our west coast. We have these beautiful inland lakes and riverways, and protecting them, protecting our drinking water is a big emphasis that I hear no matter where I am, rural areas, urban areas, suburban areas. Our wellness. And investing in making sure that people can access the health care that they need to be well and thrive. And people want their rights and freedoms back. And I think that also crosses, in most parts, the divides that we have in our state. That whether you're Republican, Independent, or Democrat, we have seen folks want women to have the right to control their own bodies and those freedoms to be able to get the health care they need without having to be near death in order to access the care they need.
See, there are things we can agree on, and there are things we can get done together. U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin, our junior senator from Wisconsin, thank you so very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it, Senator. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you.